Peeps, Pops, and Persuasion, My Father's Explosive Legacy, February 9th, 2014. Among many things my father believed in were hard work, fair play, providing for one's future, and telling entertaining stories. He could be temperamental and was definitely not above expressing himself loudly, harshly, and at times with his children, physically. Combine his quick temper and the era in which we were born, it is easy to see how my siblings and I sometimes found ourselves walking on eggshells lest we receive the wrath of Frank because of an injudicious act on our part. I am one of 5 children, and Mom was home with us all day. It is easy to see how this could be a difficult and trying situation, especially as we did not have the luxury of air conditioning in the early 1960s. One of the times when Dad lost his cool was an early morning when Mom was just shy of her 50th birthday. I don't know how old you, dear reader, are, but it is fairly common as we age to have greater and greater difficulty getting a good night's sleep until we reach the point where we are so old that we nod off seemingly anywhere, anytime, and for any occasion. Mom, being just a few years younger than I am as of this writing, was probably going through premenopause, dealing with nearly a half dozen children all day long and suffering through the sweltering heat of an Illinois summer that can only be experienced by a woman in the throes of hormone-induced hot flashes. I'm sure tensions were high in her house, and as the saying goes, if Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. I'm pretty sure Mama wasn't happy. Some of the unhappiness was the direct cycle of an ever downward traveling cycle of wanting our small house to simply exhibit a little peace and quiet on occasion. Peace could not be had with 5 single-digit age children all occupying the same small house and creating hubbub and brouhaha, so my parents' plan was to pack us up and send us to bed early. Very, very early. Newton, in describing the 3 laws of motion, said something along the lines of, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. I don't think he was thinking about the reality that if you send children to bed before the sun is down, that they are likely to awaken before the sun is up, but I am. My 2 brothers and I shared a bedroom, and early one Sunday morning we awake very, very early. As we had been instructed to stay in our room, we were in fairly close proximity to our parents' room, and we began to play joyfully, noisily, with great gusto and abandon, until my father, the avenging Valkyrie, shouted at us from across the hall, "Be quiet and go to sleep!" We responded as we had learned was prudent. We became silent, for at least 30 seconds. Having started our morning at DEFCON 5 and quickly pushing the situation to DEFCON 4 with our pre-dawn antics, the next salvo of boisterous raucousness sent the house immediately to DEFCON 3. My father, the figurative B-52 bomber, was in flight and heading for his target. In retrospect, I am convinced that he was determined to strife us without releasing his payload, but those of us in the rebel territory would not allow this pacific ending to our play. No, I would push him to DEFCON 1. Dad burst into our room, and with a face that could have illustrated the least of Dante's 7 circles of hell, he boomed, "I do not want to hear another peep out of you! Do you understand?" Even I, the youngest of the 3, understood that this was indeed a rhetorical question and should not be answered. My father stood fuming, hand on hips, with a readily understood body language that he, by God, meant business. After a few seconds of punctuated glaring on his part and quaking submission on ours, Dad left the room. It was then that I fired the tiniest of anti-aircraft missiles toward his departing bomber. I said, "Beep!" Dad returned with all of his fury rekindled and began to mete out punishment, not in sadness, but in anger. As the youngest, I received the least of his board-like hand on my buttocks, with Greg, the middle child, next, and finally Steve, 5 years my senior and the responsible roommate, receiving the brunt of punishment. After Dad had satiated his desire and satisfied his need to bring us in line, we lay whimpering in our beds and we compared damage. Mine was the least and Steve's was the worst. Definite handprints were visible on Greg's and my cheeks, but Steve had narrow belt marks on his. For the life of me, I can't figure out why a man would have had a belt handy as he was sleeping in his pajamas. Rest in peace, Dad. You gave us many wonderful gifts, including stories that only grow with age.